Hello, this is Daniel here. I'm analyzing a poem called Stafford Afternoons by Carol Ann Duffy. Before I talk about the specific uses of figurative language, let's talk about the story that is told in this poem, and the setting, as it is somewhat confusing. Please take this opportunity to pause the video and read the entire poem if you have not already done so. The story begins at the speaker's house in Stafford, which is a small town at the English countryside. The speaker is a youth, as evidenced by his or her colorful imagination and innocent exploration at the beginning of the poem. The youth finally finds his or herself in a dark wood despite the danger. The once brave explorer is sent running in fright when she encounters a man who exposes himself to her. We can now tell that the speaker is female, most likely, from her reaction to this event. The idyllic childhood of the speaker is ruined by the man's exposure of himself, revealing the dark nature of the world that accompanies coming of age. When first reading the poem, the changes in setting are hard to follow. Initially, the young girl is incredibly enthused by the concept of growing up, as it gives her the opportunity to leave the nest, so to speak, and explore outside by herself and enjoy her newly given freedom. She explores the gardens, then the motorway bridge, the noisy field with the horse, the cul-de-sac, and finally the small wood. Now that the general stuff is out of the way, let's look at some specifics. While looking through the poem, keep an eye out for diction supporting the motif of nature. This serves to romanticize the events of the poem and underline the natural process of growing up. The story begins by describing the speaker's home. The use of the extreme "only there" highlights the significance of the location to the girl. The pause refers to the escape into her imagination that occurs when she is playing, as if reality has, for a time, stopped just for her. This childish naivete sets the tone for the rest of the poem, and also characterizes the speaker. Now, when you see a garden in any type of written work, you immediately want to consider the possibility of it being a biblical allusion to the Garden of Eden. This is certainly a plausible idea, as the Garden of Eden is the setting of original sin, and the very first loss of innocence of man. This fits in well with the theme of the poem, as it foreshadows the speaker's own loss of innocence. Lines 2 and 3 of the first stanza serve as imagery, as is line 5. However, I also believe that the ice cream truck's dwindling away is a symbol for the end of the speaker's childhood innocence. In the second stanza, the setting changes twice. First, she is walking down the motorway bridge. Her childish side emerges again as she waves at the windscreens. However, this is the first time that her growing up appears to cause an issue. She doesn't enjoy the activity as she once might have, and was oddly hurt by the interaction. This shows that she is maturing and is no longer seeing things in the same way exactly. Next, she goes to a field and tends a horse, creating a vivid lie. This refers to her colorful imagination and the scenarios she devises while playing. This further highlights the idea of her purity and innocence. In the third stanza, a boy throws a stone in the cul-de-sac. This sounds like figurative language, but I cannot think of any significance for it other than as imagery. Crawling through the grass in a hedge, she is lonely, meaning alone, not sad, and thrilled, meaning excited. Finally, she enters the small wood, which gulped once and swallowed her whole. The personification of nature in this line and the next two stanzas precludes the imagery, creating a sense of foreboding, as if the forest itself is trying to warn her. Coupled with the fact that even the speaker knew that it was dangerous, leads to a eerie sort of feel. In line 16, the trees that drew sly faces from light and shade reflect the duality of the forest. There is plenty of beauty, but something more sinister lies underneath. The sticky breath of the wood is a humorous double meaning, as in, it is a stick, in effect, that is breathing, or it could refer to the sticky sap of the tree. Flowering nettles gather spit in their throats. For those of you who don't know, nettles are plants with spines on them, or thorns, rather. In addition, this line provides us with the time of year. If the nettles are flowering, then the season must be spring. Just as the plants are flowering and maturing, so too is the speaker. Back to the part where I said the forest was trying to warn her. Well, it's too late. She encounters the long-haired man. Duffy introduces the man with a sinister dialogue. Touch. This highlights the depravity of the act, as he holds out his living purple root, which is obviously his penis. I could not figure out the significance of the silver birch, however. To the speaker, it's like those scenes in action movies where a protagonist hits his head or suffers some sort of concussion, and then all they can hear is this high-pitched buzzing sound. But then, the sound rushes back, as if reality catches up to her, and she runs away. The last three lines juxtapose the previous events and serve to remind the readers of the innocence that the young girl lost. The use of simile to compare time to a red ball, like the one that a child would play with, really emphasizes that point. The speaker in this poem is very much a dynamic character, as she starts off as very happy and carefree, and ends as frightened and confused about the changing world around her.